Hello, this is Laura Brandenburg from Bridging the Gap, and today I want to talk about barely managed chaos. Now, how do you know if you're working in barely managed chaos? Well, here are some of the complaints that we receive from our community all the time. First, you might be in a big picture meeting or on a big project, and it's like requirements just keep getting added and added to that project, and there's no like container for those other requirements, and so that project just gets so bloated it never gets off the ground. Again, you're doing a lot of work, not a lot of implementation. Another scenario is you spend a little time here, a little time there. You're constantly experiencing shifting priorities, new requirements popping up, new projects that are more important than what you've been working on. And so you kind of go from one project to the other without ever actually finishing anything and getting it, again, it comes to getting it done, getting it ready for implementation, right? Or you manage to get some requirements that are pretty close for implementation, but now your developers get pulled off. So you're ready to go on this really strategic, important initiative, and they get pulled away from your meeting or your review or even the project altogether to work on like some top priority project for a very influential executive. All right, do any of these sound familiar? Well, the solution to this kind of challenge is a project list. And it's relatively simple in theory. And inside my project prioritization organizer, I share my template for the project list, as well as some supporting process documentation and guidance about how to put this kind of process in place in your organization. But today I want to share some of the really simple practices and ways that you need to set this process up to ensure success. So when you start managing all of your organization through a project list, one of the big rules is that everything has to go on the list, right? So you can't have like some stuff on the list and some stuff not on the list. Like it all has to go on the list. Otherwise the list loses its value, it loses its authority. So you got to keep line items for any project, that's pulling the business analysis team, that's pulling the business stakeholder team, that's pulling the development team. You've got to keep it all on one list. Okay, that's the first key. If it's not all on the list, then it's going to become a distraction and it's going to create chaos in your like nice organized environment of the list. The second thing, in order for this to work, that list needs to be updated routinely, often every week. So that means new projects get added to the list. Like that's okay, we're always gonna have new ideas. So new things need to get added to the list. If there are fire drills, they need to get added to the list. If something new top priority comes up, it needs to get added to the list. And so that is just this constant process of adding to the list and removing things from the list, either when they become irrelevant or not a priority, or when they get done, right? Like we get to celebrate and update the list as things get done as well. Okay, so the next thing is that all stakeholders must regularly review the new items. And this isn't like all the stakeholders, but all the key stakeholders. So you need to have all the different business areas represented so that nobody feels like their work is cut out and everybody has a chance to negotiate for their items on the list to be, to get attention and to get resources and to get prioritized. Because that's an important point. That list, it's not just a list of all the things, it's a prioritized list of all the things. It actually shows what things we're working on and what things we're not. Okay, this is a really important one because I've seen a lot of organizations do all this work to get their business team aligned and negotiate priorities and decide what's the priority and what's not. But then their delivery team doesn't honor the list. So your delivery team has to honor it as well. That means if super influential VP stops by developer Joe's desk and asks you to start working on something else, or if you as the business analyst get asked to work on something else, you say, where does this fit on the list? Right? Or it's going to take away from my work on this other thing that is a priority on the list. So could you make sure that this gets aligned and you make some decisions about those priorities as a stakeholder group? So everybody has to respect the list and respect the priorities. And as soon as people start not respecting those lists and those priorities, that's when that's when the chaos comes back in, right? Because now we're pulling all this attention away from what our business team had said was top priority. So a final thing, which really is not necessary but is super helpful, is that you align what's on the list to the strategic objectives of your organization. This happens every year, right? Your organization comes out with this like big picture objectives and all these things that they want to have done and how they fit together in like the big picture. And then like your team sets off to work on other things. We want your project list to align to those strategic objectives and show how you're making progress against those objectives. And it'll be a lot more powerful tool that way. Now, if your organization doesn't have strategic objectives, like don't worry about it. Just start with a list and really it will help surface information about those objectives. So I'd love to hear what you think about this idea. Leave a comment below. How do you see a project list helping your organization? Again, this is Laura Brandenburg with Bridging the Gap, and we help you start your business analyst career.